Okay, so this is the problem. For those who have formatting a format of problem statement writings for one paragraph or a few words, this is how they write. Okay. However, today I just conclude it and summarize it in a few paragraph lah. Kalau kata nak betul-betul problem statements punya formatting for Malaysian University, of course we have to construct it in a few paragraph long. All right. Okay. So this is how we write a practical research problem. Means it will highlight the practical or current practice problems that arise and who is affected by that problem and what is the efforts or attempts that we have done to solve the problem. In anyhow, despite the efforts, we still facing the problems. So the problems, the last one that still exists is our research. It's our responsibility to propose a solution. So you need to construct your problem statement in this flow. Okay, perhaps when I put it in the questions, so if examiner or reader asks you those questions, ada hint-hint sikit nak sama-sama sikit kan, then perhaps you can answer like this. Okay, all right. Now, let's go to the theoretical research problem. Okay, for theoretical research problem, in the terms of contextualize the problem, okay, you have to think about the scientific, the social or historical background of the idea or phenomenon that we want to debate. Okay, so perhaps I listed 3 questions for theoretical that you need to ask yourself if you are in the theoretical research problems group. Okay, so what is already known about the problem? Apa yang kita dah tahu tentang problems? Is the problem limited to a certain time period or geography area? For examples like COVID-19. It is affected only people at Wuhan or the whole world? Okay, so we need to clarify it in our research problems for theoretical research. How has the problem been defined and debated in the scholarly literature? See, they are not support the problems based on the practice or current practice problems, but we support the problems based on the idea or debate or defined by previous author. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at the example. Okay. In the past 10 years, to answer question number 1, what is already known about the problem? In the past 10 years, see, we are actually going 10 years back to come up with the idea what is already known about the problem existed. Okay, I take examples of gig economy. In the past 10 years, the gig economy has become an increasingly important segment of the labor market. Under 30s are more likely to engage in freelance, contracted or 0-hour work arrangement instead of traditional full-time jobs. Okay, so this is a problem. All right, it's not the problem. I mean, this is the idea or the problems or the subject that we want to talk about in our problem statement. Okay, so to answer the second question, is the problem limited to a certain time period or geographical area? Okay, so we go to our second sentences. America is well on its way to establishing a gig economy. And estimates show as much as a third of the working population is already in some gig capacity. In the modern digital world, it's becoming increasingly common for people to work remotely or from home across the region. So means 10 years ago, maybe it is limited to America. Okay, but in current modern digital world, it's have already spread to all over the world, even in Malaysia. We can see Uber, GrabFood, YouTuber, you know, that kind of things is fall under gig economy. Okay, because we are not having a traditional full-time jobs, right? Okay, so that one is for the second question. And the last question that you need to ask yourself is, how has the problem been defined and debated in the scholarly literature? Okay, so we put on, we put our point, sorry, excuse me. We put our point on previous research. Okay, Research on the reasons for and consequences of this shift has focused on objective measures of income, working hours, and employment condition. But there has been little work exploring young people's subjective experiences of the gig economy. Nampak So, based on the scholars, pertinent authors in the area, this is a debatable points, and these are actually the way they define the problems aroused from the gig economy. Okay, so ini cara untuk menulis ataupun contextualize the problem based on theoretical research problem. Okay, so as you can see, there are totally different types of questions need to ask for two different types of research. Okay, it's totally different questions. In practical research means actual doing or using of something rather than theories and ideas. Okay, that in contrast to theoretical research, right? Hopefully by now you get an initial idea on how to prepare a concise and concrete problem statement for two types of the research. Sometimes there are scholars that combine two types of research. Okay, they debate about the theoretical and also they debate about the practical and applied one. Okay, but your research cannot be an integrations or hybrids of two types of research. You can be debate about the points, but your research is still focusing on either practical research or theoretical research. Okay, so please bear in your mind. Right, so make sure by the time come, you are able to explain clearly your problem statement with less hesitation, especially during the presentations in proposal defense room. If you're not confident with your problem statements, then how you want to convince your examiner? Kita present my problem is actually dah sudah. How you want to convince your examiner? Okay, so you first need to confidence and clearly define, clearly and well understood your problem. Then you have a confidence to explain it to other people. Okay, that's why my first point before I started this slide, I advise you to briefly share your idea with your peers, with your supervisors, and maybe in some of the point you present it, okay, so that you have a confidence and you have an insight, you have a feedback. What is going wrong? What is good? What is most boring parts of your research? You know, in that way, we have capability to make it to present it concisely during our proposal defense. Okay, don't let your proposal defense be your first feedback. That is very dangerous because you actually have a potential to be bombarded with lots of questions and bullets. So please prepare for the defense by sharing briefly your idea of the problem statements and the research with your peers and your committee. Okay. All right. Habis Satu contextualize the problem, which is our first step to construct a problem statement. Okay, now the second step will be show why it matters. I really hope you can read the words clearly. I just noticed that my font is a little bit smaller, but hopefully kita tak ada screen besar kan, so everyone is in front of laptop, right? So hopefully okay lah. Okay, so the second step will be show why it matters. The reason why I'm not presenting the PowerPoint because it's much more easier for me to jump here and there throughout the slides. Okay, wait. My level of battery is warning. Okay, so the second one is show why it matters. Once you have put your problem statement in context, then you have to convince that it is matters. You need to ask yourself the questions, so what? Okay. The problem statement should also address the relevance of the research. Why is it important that the problem is solved? So here you need to express it in your research problem. All right. To make it clear why your research problem matters, you can ask yourself these three questions. What will happen if the problem is not solved? Who will feel the consequences? Does the problem have a wider relevance? Okay, but please, sahabat-sahabat, this doesn't mean you have to do something groundbreaking or would changing the world. It's more important that the problem is researchable, feasible, and clearly addresses relevant issues in your field. Okay, it's not necessary you come with something that break through or whatever. Okay, but the most important thing is your research is relevant and researchable to the context, current context. Okay, so let's take a look at the example. Okay, back to our first examples for practical research. Okay, so let us answer the first question. What will happen if the problem is not solved? Okay, so I put in words, it is acknowledged static illustration is not adequate to explain the dynamic and abstract concept in biology, which leads to misconception among students. This will happen if the problem is not solved. Okay, so we're answering the question number 1. Okay, the second question that you need to ask yourself, who will feel the consequences? Okay, then we start with, students face difficulties in understanding the concepts and various biological events that are unfamiliar and cannot be seen by the naked eye. So who will feel the consequences? The students, all right? And then elaborate a little bit what is the consequences that they will face with. Okay, and the last question that we need to answer is, does the problem have wider relevance? Does the, how to put in a simpler words? For example, like, does the problems have a similar issues? Okay, similar issues, other issues or similar issues that are found in other contexts, but still in the same area as us. Okay, so how I put it into words? Okay, this problem is further intensified. See, I use this kind of phrase. This problem is further intensified because I want to highlight it. Okay, saya takut ada apa-apa problem. Tak ada apa-apa problem. Kalau ada problem, Atira, please inform me or alert me. So by now, I assume that all of you are with me. Okay, jangan tidur, jangan lari, duduk senyap-senyap. Okay, so this problem is further intensified. This is the way how I want to highlight the similar issues found in other contexts from the specific problems that we have stated earlier, all right? Okay, this problem is further intensified by the time constraint issue faced by teachers to develop and prepare alternative tools to teach, resulting in instructional strategy to be stereotyped. So besides the presentations are using static illustration, that is the first problem, okay? Despite that static illustration, the instructional strategy in the classroom is focusing on the teacher-centered. Because teachers may be facing with a time constraint, and then sometimes they are not able to produce or develop their own module, okay? So the problem that we have stated earlier have further intensified because of this issue. So this is why it matters, okay? We have put it in context, the problems that we want to propose. And the second one is we need to highlight that why it matters for us to study this topic. Right. I hope you can get it. Okay, so actually this one, I put it this way so that you can easier connect the dot. Okay, but when you are actually writing, then this one will be in one paragraph, okay? So we deleted this one, delete this one. So more or less, why it matters will be in a very short and concise paragraph. The first paragraph, put it into context first. The second paragraph, explain why it matters, right? And the last paragraph, now we'll go to our last paragraph. Okay, so before we go to the third one, sorry, I need to highlight the theoretical research problems. Okay, tadi, and the first one is the practical research problem. The second one is why it matters in theoretical research problems. Okay, so perhaps in theoretical research problems, there are 3 questions that you need to answer. And before that, sometimes the theoretical research ni, dia ada clear practical consequences. Okay, dia ada clear practical consequences, but their relevance is less immediately. Maksudnya bila kita present the idea, maybe the consequences, we have to wait for another practical researcher to take our ideas and put it into application. Alright? Okay, so now there are 3 questions that you need to ask your question and yourself. How we resolving the problem advance understanding of the topic? Okay, the second one is what benefits will it have for future research? And does the problem have direct or indirect consequences for society? Okay, but please bear in your mind, theoretical research is more or less focusing on the idea, okay, not the practical part of the research, not the real implementation. Okay, so let's take a look at the example. Okay, so to answer the question number 1, how we resolving the problem advance understanding of the topic? In the literature, let's go back to our examples with the gig economy previously. In the literature on the gig economy, these new forms of employment are sometimes characterized as a flexible active choice and sometimes as an exploitative last resort. Okay, so how we're resolving the problem advance understanding of the topic. So we need, based on the literature review, this is actually the insights of the gig economy. Okay, so we need to advance understanding. Is it true it is a flexible active choice or it is an exploitative last resort? Is it true? So we need to find this. Okay, what benefits will it have for future research? If we find that in the research, what is actually benefits will it have for future research? Okay, so then we come into words. To gain a fuller understanding of why young people engage in the gig economy, in-depth qualitative research is required. So means the benefits is we have a chance to fuller understanding of why so many young people engage in this type of economy. Satu. Okay, and the last questions that you need to ask is, does the problem have direct or indirect consequences for society? Okay, so let's put it in the words. Focusing on workers' experiences can help develop more robust theories of flexibility and precarity in contemporary employment, as well as potentially informing future policy objectives. Nampak? So ini adalah dia punya consequences for society. Once we know what is the benefits for the future research, then perhaps through our research, we can develop more robust theories. We can come up with maybe a comprehensive guideline for the policy, for example, for the contemporary employment for management, a certain company, okay? So this is actually how we put the theoretical research punya problem statement and how to explain it, why it matters. Simple sangat je sebenarnya. The thing is, you need to answer the questions. I have provided you with the questions. Then later on, you can check your proposal. Either you have those questions or you don't have. Okay, so please, you can do this. All right. So let's go to the final step, which is set your aims and objectives. Okay. All right. So finally, the problem statement should frame how you intend to address the problem. Okay. Your goal should not be, of course, it should not be to find a conclusive solution because there are so many solutions, right? We are just propose one of the solution, okay? But your goal actually to focus on, to seek out the reasons behind the problem and propose more effective approaches to tackling or understanding the problems, okay? Because of course there are so many other researchers that work on the same subject area as us, right? So to tell the people that our research is a definite solution or a conclusive solution is typically wrong, all right? Because there are so many alternative solutions that others ataupun people can put it on. But still, you have to reasoning well why you want to do this and set your aims and objective for your problems. Okay, so how to set the aims and objective? Okay, now, more or less, aim and objective, even though it is sounds similar, okay, but they are slightly different in the presentations of the aims and objective in your writing, okay. More or less, the aim is the overall purpose of your research. It is generally written in the infinitive form, like the aim of this study is to determine what. This project aims to explore what. Okay, so that one is actually the overall purpose. The objectives are the concrete steps you will take to achieve the aim. For example, like this study will employ a survey, or this study will employ an experimental design to establish the causal effect relationship between this and that, you know. So it is more specific and it is more concrete. That means dia tak ada macam virtually say, oh, this is my hope or this is my aims. No, it is concretely written that you want to do this, to find out about this through this way. So that one is the objectives. Okay, let's see an example. Okay, for example, aims. This study will focus on the integrations of one of the theory, which is, I put it as an example, cognitive theory of multimedia learning and inquiry learning through problem posing instructional strategy to deliver the topic and subsequently enhance low order thinking skills and high order thinking skills among students. You see, it's not a concrete one. It's just really talking about this is our hope. Now, this is our focuses, this is our aims of this study. Okay, but for objective, usually we use a concrete words. Hence, this study will employ a design and developmental research to develop a multimedia module that can facilitate students to visualize the abstract and dynamic processes regarding the concepts and applications in biology. It is stated clearly and concretely. We want to use what type of design and what we want to develop or what we want to figure out or inquire in our research. Okay, so hopefully you get the differences between the aims and the objective. Okay, so when I put this into words at the end of my problem statement, this is what we call as thesis statement. Thesis statement. So thesis statement is more or less is the whole idea of your proposed research. Okay. So when it comes to the questions, if your reader or examiner asks you, please tell me about your research in 1 minute. For example, I give that example because actually I received that question during my proposal defense. Okay. So in 1 minute, or sometimes the reader will ask you creatively, tell me about your research in 3 sentences. See? So you cannot explain the whole things or the whole of your writings in 3 sentences. What the examiner or reader means by is your thesis statement. What is your thesis is all about? So you can simply say, okay, so my thesis, in my thesis, I will integrate 2 types of theory, which is cognitive theory of multimedia learning and problem posing to enhance the thinking skills among the students, while my objective is to develop a module to facilitate that enhancement in order to measure the students' performance at the end of the research. Okay, so as simple as that. Put it concretely like that. So when the reader asks you what is your thesis statement or what is your actually research is all about, then you have to combine your aims and your objective in a very short and brief explanation. Okay. Okay tak setakat ni? Masih bernyawa? Still breathing? All right, now, so that is our first factors to win. To win your proposal defense. Okay, so means you are actually on the way if you have that kind of concept. Okay, that kind of crucial factors in your writing and in your slide. Okay, now let's go to our second part of the first factors. Complicated betul kan. The first factors which is still lagi dalam contents. Okay, so the second content in our proposal defense will focusing on the conceptual framework. Okay, so this in anyhow dia memang integrated with the contents, with the problem statement. Okay, because more or less conceptual framework is your thesis statement that have been visualized into the diagrams. Okay, because conceptual framework is the framework that illustrates what you expect to find through your research. It defines, more or less, it defines the relevant variables for your study and maps out how they might relate to each other. Okay, so you have to put your expected relationship between your variables. Okay, for qualitative qualitative study, sasul. For qualitative study, perhaps many of you said that I don't have any variables because my study is qualitative study. Okay, but bear in your mind, even though you are qualitative study, you have something that you extract from your theory, and also you have something that you want to observe at the end of the day. So those actually are your variables in qualitative study, even though we don't call it as a variables, because usually variables is a famous terms in quantitative study. Okay, but for me, I just call it as a variables because it's easy for me to define it for you. Okay, so actually what is variables? Variables they're simply the characteristic or properties that you want to study. That's why I told you previously, even in qualitative study, we have those properties or characteristics that you want to study in your research. Okay, so that's why I call it also variables, even though you are in qualitative study. Okay, so the conceptual framework will map the expected relationship between them. Okay, I bring one example for our session today. Okay, let's say I want to develop a module. Go back to our thesis statement tadi. Okay, so this is our thesis. Today, everyone thesis is this thesis. Okay, so we want to develop a module by integrating a multimedia elements to teach biology. All right. To teach biology. Okay, so we want to develop a module, employ a design and developmental research to teach the abstract and dynamic concept of the biology subject. All right. And at the end of the research, I want to measure the students' performance. Okay, either it is enhanced or the performance, the students can perform better or not during using my module. Okay, so let us take a look the proposed conceptual framework that will be combining the theory that related to studies. The first one. The second one is the variables that involves in the study. The third one, remember, we need to establish the expected relationship between the variables. When I say the relationship, usually we are actually talking about how these will influence that. What factors will influence these? What variables influence what variables? That one is actually relationship when I talk about relationship, okay? And the last one, often represented in visual form. You can have a narrative types of framework, okay, no worries. Let's say you don't have any skills to construct in a visual or diagram form. You can have it in a narrative types, but sometimes, most of the times, not sometimes, most of the times, people understand diagram faster and clearer compared to words. Okay, so my advice, visualize it if you are able to do it. Okay, even though you are qualitative type of study, okay, it's not a scene for you to conceptualize or visualize your conceptual framework in certain way. All right. Okay, so let's take a look the proposed conceptual framework for our study. This one I presented here. Okay. So here I have the first items. Boleh ke I panggil di items? Tak apalah. The first components in our framework, conceptual framework, which is the theory. Okay, the theory that I want to use in my study is cognitive theory of multimedia learning. So, kawan-kawan, that you can see in the diagrams, okay, now you can see in the slide is cognitive theory of multimedia learning. It is not really crucial for you to understand the theory, but I'm actually explaining that this one is my theory, alright? Kalau siapa-siapa tak biasa, jangan risau, tak faham pun tak apa. I just want to show that this is the theory that I have chose in my study. Okay, so these are the cognitive theory of multimedia learning. Okay, and I want to combine it with another theory. So it means I have two theory, which is I want to integrate these two theories to develop my module. Okay, now I put another theory in my first theory, which is the problem posing 4C elements. And I put an arrow to show the relationship between prior knowledge and the elements. Okay, this is what we mean as relationship in diagram. Okay, then at the end of the research, I want to measure a student's performance. The properties that I want to measure is student's performance. So I put it inside my conceptual framework. Okay, so my student's performance will be here because at the end of the research, by integrating these two theories, okay, cognitive theory ni satu, problem posing ni satu, at the end, we will have our students' performance. Okay, so these elements in the theory that we actually integrate in our module is known as independent variables. Okay, so the properties that we put it as a independent variable because all the characteristic of the theory have to reveal in the module. Okay, and this one, whereas the student's performance will be our properties to measure. Okay, we want to measure these properties at the end of the research. So we put it as a dependent variable. Betul. Bukan kata you all, I pun selalu tertukar IB and DV. Even though dah 5 years bergelumang in IB and DV. Alright, so this is my conceptual framework, which is the integrations of the theory that I chose in my research and also the relationship between those theories and also the measurement ataupun the properties that I want to measure at the end of the study. So I have this concise and concrete conceptual framework. Okay, so I propose this conceptual framework to done or to implement my research in order to settle the problem that I have concretely right in my problem statement. Okay, alright, so habis untuk conceptual framework. Okay, but ingat you can also put it in a narrative words. Tak ada masalah. You can put it in the sentences, you can write it down in the words, in paragraph and so on so on without visualize it. But my advice is actually much more better if you can present it in your proposal defense in this way so that you don't have 3 slides or 4 slides just to explain your conceptual framework. Okay, this one is just one concrete slide to explain every little thing about your research. So it's more practical to present it this way during your proposal defense. Kalau boleh buat macam pop-up macam I buat tadi pun okay. So means you put a little bit of animation kat situ lah, but don't put it too much, right? Just to facilitate your presentations, that's all. Okay, so habis conceptual framework. Now, we go to the next factors that you need to nail in your content of the proposal. Of course, our research design. Ini memang crucial part, okay? Memang sangat crucial because this is actually macam mana I want to put this one, because sometimes examiner will just pull out the question, such as like, what is your research approach? What is your technique to collect the data? They will just pull it out, okay? And sometimes for us, the newbies researcher ni kan, sometimes while we are still confused approach to apa, what is strategy, which one is the technique, we're still confused with that kind of terms. So when we get this kind of questions, it will cause us panic. Betul tak? Sebab kita tak tahu which one is one, okay? Which one is which one. So my advice, please, before you go into the room for proposal defense, or way before actually, 2 months before, you need to nail this in your writing proposal. You really need to claim your territory. What is your philosophy that you actually put it as a foundation? What is your approach in your research? What is your methodological choices? Ni kan mixed method ke multi-method pun masih lagi keliru. So it will be a very big problems in your proposal defense, okay? What is the strategies that you choose? What is the time horizon that you choose? Even it's either it is a longitudinal type of study or it is a cross-sectional type of study. So you really need to specify it layer by layer. So in order to explain this research design, I just go through this thing very fast today, okay? Because this is actually have been or will be covered thoroughly in your research methodology class. Unfortunately, our class today is not research methodology. It's just, I just introduce it briefly so that you know where is the part, what is the part that you really need to give or pay attention, okay? All right, so in explaining or in mastering your research design, I would like to suggest a model, okay? A model which is known as the research onion. Okay. This actually, the research onion, you would be probably meet with this research onion in your research methodology class, okay? But not many students use this or write this in their proposal. And some of us don't even know when to use this research onion, okay? So my suggestion, use this model and please use it to claim the territory for your research design in chapter 3. Okay, so means in your chapter 3 writing, under the research design topic, okay, you can use this research onion to write your paradigm of research layer by layer. Okay, as you can see, the research onions is actually proposed by Saunders et al. Oh, I tak tulis et al. Tu. But there are a few authors lagi with Saunders. Okay, this one is actually, Saunders put it this way on how we have to explain and on how we need to design our research wholly, the whole research, starting from the philosophy. Okay, so if you can see the layer, the first one is the philosophy. Okay, so kalau tengok dekat philosophy, we have a few types of philosophy, and each philosophy, they have a different perspective and beliefs. So you really need to choose which philosophy will support your research. Okay, for examples, let's say I take the positivism. Okay, positivism philosophy is focusing on the facts. Okay, they need a solid evidence in order to put it into discussion and claim it as a researchable. Okay, so usually positivism researcher choose quantitative over qualitative, okay, because they need facts, numbers, and they need to quantify something so that the percentage or the description is in number. Okay, so if you actually, this type of study, you are using a mono method like quantitative only, then you may choose positivism philosophy. Okay, maybe the second example I will choose like pragmatism, for example. Okay, for pragmatism philosophy, pragmatism, scholars in pragmatism believes that the pragmatism researcher can employ or implement any types of methods, any types of tools, and any types of technique in their research as long as it is practical and functional to answer their research question. Okay, so if your research is actually mixed here and there, kejap quali, kejap quanti, and then tiba-tiba quanti lagi and in the middle of the processes, so I think it is suitable for you to choose a pragmatism philosophy. Okay, now the second layer is focusing on the approach. Okay, based on Saunders, approach is what we call as deductive or inductive. That one is approach as defined by Saunders. Okay, and we have the latest one is abductive. Abductive is when you extend a certain theories. I will not go further about what is this and what is that because because clearly we need another bengkel for just to explain this onion. Pagi-pagi onioning kan, membawang pagi-pagi. Okay, so the third layer. Aduh, hai. Kadang-kadang macam it is so frustrated when you actually go online class because when you laugh, you make some jokes, you have to laugh by yourself. You don't see any people laugh with you, you know? They're kind of silly, you know that? Okay, so the third layer will be the methodological choice. Okay, so here you need to choose your method, which is either you want to use only one method, which is fall under mono method, okay, and either your method is qualitative or quantitative, you have to choose, or you want to go for multi-method, which is you want to use a different types of method in one research, okay, tak kisahlah, okay, tak kisah, regardless qualitative or quantitative, okay, we have multi-method quantitative, means all quantitative but a different types of method, or you can combine all method of qualitative, okay, differently in one research, or you can combine quantitative and qualitative of method in multi-method. Okay, and last kita ada mixed method. Okay, and mixed method also divided into two types, which is simple and complex. Okay, so the complex is the complex one. Okay, the simple is maybe like embedded design one, which is a very simple mixed method. It's not using a complex data and complex method in their method, all right? So this is your choice. Okay, you want to choose mix, multi, or mono. So you need to write it down in your research design. Okay, so when examiner asks you, so what is your method, methodological choice? Oh, my method is multi-method. Why you use multi-method? Then explain why your research is defined as multi-method. You should nail this, okay? All right, so the fourth layer will be strategies. Yes, if you use a multi-method, then you will have a different types of strategies in your research too, okay? So you need to define it clearly. You are using survey, where you are using, why you are using survey, okay? And then maybe another part you are using experimental, or maybe another part you are using a narrative inquiry, and why you are using that, what is the relevantness, okay? Perhaps sometimes we are actually combining the method because that is the only way practically that will answer our research question. Okay, so you need to justify it, and please bring some support or evidence from the previous studies that show that previous author also do the same. Maksudnya ada previous study that combining these multiple methods to answer one type of research questions and so on and so on. Okay, so please cite it accordingly. Okay, and then we go to time horizon. Okay, time horizon, either you are doing cross-sectional or longitudinal. Cross-sectional is actually more or less like a very short span time of research. Okay, it's not really involve a long time for observations or collecting data. Okay, for example, like ethnography or phenomenological, okay, that you can collect the data only once in 3 years time, okay, so that one will fall under longitudinal types of research, okay, but more or less I love to advise this for your PhD or for your masters. Please avoid that kind of longitudinal research, okay, because we want to get our PhD or our master first, then we will rock the world after that, okay. So sabar dulu. Kalau nak rock the world pun sabar dulu. Okay, and the last one we will actually focusing the writing on the types of data collection and also the data analysis. Okay, so we will explain thoroughly what is the technique that we use in our research and also how we analyze the data that we have collected. Okay, maybe some of you actually have lots of questions on how to write this research onion and put it in words in your writing. Okay, so let me show you examples of the writing. Okay. Kejap I stop sharing this one first. And then I share another file. Okay, sat. Okay, wait. Are you still here with me? Sambil-sambil boleh minum kopi.
Yes, Doktor. Thank you, Doktor.
Okay, thank you. Ingatkan dah tidur lah semua. Memang nak kena rotan untuk tidur. Okay, Sat, I share another content. Oh my God, where is? Kat mana? Sat, I think I've opened it. Oh, tak boleh nak share words. Kenapa? Okay. Okay, boleh nampak tak my word? Okay. Alright. So how to put it in words and in your writing in chapter 3. This one is for chapter 3, specifically for chapter 3. Yeah? So means you have to nail this one. Okay, because like I mentioned previously, of course, the examiner can freely to ask you any of this, right? And my advice is if you want to choose one model, then stick to that model. Okay, don't get yourself confused with this model and that model, because please bear in your mind, some scholars define this as philosophy. Some scholars are actually calling it as a paradigm. Okay, maybe some scholars define the strategies by Saunders as a technique in their writing. So means once you actually choose a model or a pertinent authors, then you stick to that one so that you can justify the assumptions or the findings or the writings or the idea based on that particular pertinent author. But please don't cite my name lah, because I am nobody. I'm not a pertinent authors. Please cite pertinent authors. Nanti kan dalam bilik tanya, siapa Tuti? Who is Tuti? Parah nanti nak jawab. Okay, but please stick to the pertinent authors that you have choose. Alright, so how to put it in words? Now I give you and go through a few examples, okay? Firstly. Okay, so the first one, of course, you have to put your general introduction. Alright. And the second one, based on the first layer of Saunders, okay, we need to touch about philosophies. So you write it down, what is your philosophy's choice? Okay, now, in this example, I put my philosophies in 4 beliefs, which is through the ontological sense, epistemological sense, axiological sense, and methodological sense. Okay, so these are actually the standard way on how to explain your philosophies, because a part of philosophies, we have a beliefs, which is 4 assumption, yang kita namakan sebagai ontology, epistemology, axiology, and methodology. Okay, more or less this thing you will be actually meet during your research methodology class. Itu sebab I bagi you just through an idea so that you can read it further after this. Okay. Alright, so let us put it like this. So justify our philosophies of choices. Kalau tengok contoh kat sini, saya cakap from 4 assumptions, okay, based on the assumptions, pragmatism research, based on these assumptions or consideration, pragmatism is seen as the best paradigm for this study because of the suitability beliefs and methodological practices. Okay, so before that, we need to explain methodological assumption, axiological assumption from through 4 assumptions. Then we justify the choices of philosophy. Satu. Okay. The second layer is actually about approach. So here you need to define your research is inductive or deductive or both. Okay, you need to define it in one paragraph. Okay, you don't have to do a subtopic, a new subtopic for explaining each layer. Okay, you can comprise it in one subtopic, which is research design, but separately into separate paragraph. Okay. And then after approach, after have justified either inductive or deductive, then we go to the third layer, which is a strategy or fields. There are some scholars that put the field together with the strategy. Okay, so let us take a look the strategy. For example, here, kalau tengok balik pada Saunders tadi, the strategy is our experimental ke, interview ke, our survey ke, that is the strategy. So you need to justify what is the strategy that you use in order to collect the data here, okay, the third layer. The next layer will be the methodological choice. If you still remember that I explained you about mono method, multi-method, mixed method, okay, so here you need to justify. If your research are using both of the method, then maybe perhaps you can choose between mixed method or multi-method, okay? All right, so after that we have a time horizon, okay? Before we go to data collection technique and data analysis, we have time horizon. So either you want to do a cross-sectional or longitudinal studies. Okay, so we stop at time horizon because data collection technique will be a new subtopic in our chapter 3. Okay, so more or less research design will be stopped at time horizon choice. So habislah. This is actually what you need to explain and write concisely in your research design. Okay, it's not just like I'm using experimental and then you are actually explaining your process of the experimental implementation. No. For me it is a no, because based on pertinent authors, in research design actually you need to explain how you design your research wholly. Maksudnya the full research, how you want to implement it. What is your philosophy, what is your foundation, what is your strategies and so on and so on. Okay, so perhaps you get the initial idea. Ni memang buat kelas research design ni dah boleh 3 hari 3 malam pun tak cukup. Okay, so let us go back to our PowerPoint presentation. Wait. Okay, settle the research onion by Saunders. But we have another 2 models that is maybe reliable for you also to use that models, which is the modified model and also, oh my God, I tak ingat, what is the name of the model, another model. Modified model and also, apa ada tak yang ingat? Ya Allah, subhanallah. Okay, it's okay. I come back to you later about the model. Okay, so we have 3 models actually in order to explain the research design. But the most comprehensive model is from Saunders, which is the research onion that have for about 7 layers tadi kan. Okay, the last thing that you really need to nail for your content of the proposal is the alignment. When I said alignment, it comes to you need to make sure that your research objective, your research question, method, and data analysis is aligned and compatible. Okay. When I said aligned and compatible means your data analysis and method will be able to execute and subsequently it will answer your research question and achieve your research objective. Okay, let me show you an example. I like to present the alignment in table like this, okay, so that we can detect the error or the uncompatible method or analysis with our research question and research objective. Okay, so let me put this way, and then if you want to present this during your proposal defense also will be good, okay, because the reader or examiner can actually view your research objective until your analysis data in one simple slide. Okay, so for example, I put my research objective number 1, okay, together with my research question, and I put a method column to make sure research question is answered using what method. Is it applicable? Is it compatible? Okay, how I want to make sure it is compatible? Okay, for example, my first method for my RQ 1.1 is I want to execute interview. Okay, so let's check our research question. Based on experts' opinion, to what extent developing a module is necessary? So for me, it is compatible because we want to ask the experts' opinions. In anyhow, we have to interview them. Or you can put a survey, but of course, once you use a survey design, you need a large sample. Okay, but for interview, then you don't have to employ a large sample because it can be as minimum as 3%, okay, which is you can get a faster insight about your necessity. Okay, and how we want to analyze the data. Since it is interview, so of course it is compatible for us to use a qualitative data analysis. Okay, for examples like thematic analysis or content analysis. Okay, all right, let's go through this research question number 2. How do the previous studies have implemented problem posing instructional strategy in their studies? Don't give attention to the problem posing things. Okay, that one is just one of the elements in the research. Okay, so the methods that I use is systematic literature review. Is it compatible? Okay, for me, it is compatible because we want to actually explore the previous studies. So of course, in anyhow, kita kena tengok literature review through a literature review. But we actually done it systematically. Which is there is a different ways and different methods and different approach for that method. Okay, it's different from literature review, standard literature review. Okay, so how we want to analyze the content or the findings? We use thematic analysis. So this is how actually you check your compatibility between your research objective, research question, method, and analysis. Okay, so my advice, you put it in this table like this, okay? Then you check for the compatibility. Either your choice of analysis is actually answering your research question or not. Ini adalah salah satu kaedah untuk check the alignment. So during your proposal defense, you present this table and then you elaborate, okay, your RO, your RQ, your method analysis using this very simple table. You don't have to put it in a very long sentence just to go through one and each of your RO, RQ, and analysis. Okay, settle alignment. All right. So we've done not done yet. That one is only for the first factor, which is content. I don't believe content. We take for about 1.5 hours for just content. See how crucial the content is. Okay, so you really need to give a very big attention to organize your content while you are writing, okay? Because ultimately the content of your proposal will define whether it is negative or positive kind of results, all right? Okay, now we go for our second factors that also play a crucial roles in our presentation. Macam tersasul pula lalas kan. Okay, the second one will be the presentation. When I said presentation means you have to deal with or you have to construct with an engaging PowerPoint presentations. Okay, it's not bombarded with so many information. Okay, because yes, people are frustrated when they are bombarded with a lots of information in one slide, and then furthermore there are some pictures that are actually not necessary pun duduk kat situ. For example, like the teachers, the teachers holding a ruler and show something on the whiteboard. You know, that kind of image is unnecessary in your slides. Okay, so how we want to construct an engaging PowerPoint presentation for your proposal defense. Okay. All right. So the first thing is, if you have the data, but it's also applied to whole slide, okay, please visualize your data. Okay, if you have the data, but it's also applied to another slide, which is, I advise you to put it in infographic forms, okay, but not too many infographic. Jangan sampai pula pening pula tengok infographics, okay? Right? So put a lot of data in the slide might be not a good idea. It is, yes, the most uninteresting part. If audience are busy reading your slide rather than pay attention to your presentation, okay? And these apply for the whole types of slide and presentation, okay? Right, slide like this will make the audience to read and try to make sense of the data. For example, kan, this kind of slide, okay, will drag the attentions of the audience to the sentences. Okay, dia tengah nak make sense of the data and they are not paying attention what actually are you saying. And furthermore, ini I tak sempat letak, but furthermore, some of us are put unnecessary images around the data to make it look interesting, but unfortunately it's not. Okay, instead, you can present it like this. Okay, visualize the data. Okay, so means it is easier to interpret the data. And then you have to play a role as a presenter. Okay, you elaborate the data, but the data is concisely present on your slide. Okay, the critical informations can be actually absorbed by the audience just by looking at the visualization and also the title. It is easier, it is easier to interpret the data. Kejap 1 minit minum air. Okay, it is important for you as a presenter to guide the eyes of the audience towards an important facts. Okay, because sometimes when we are presenting, we tend to read the slide rather than elaborate and explaining to our audience. So please avoid reading the slide. Macam ni kan, ada tunjuk-tunjuk, then we read the slide. Okay, you are actually as presenter, you tak boleh tengok the slide. You cannot look at the slide the whole times, the whole presentation. Maybe once a while, yes, it is okay, okay? But please avoid it, right? So we really need to bring the eyes of the audience to the important facts of our data. Okay, which bring me to point number 2. Okay, point number 2 is less is more. Ini sangat penting. Okay, less is more. Bila dalam presentations, okay, use white space and don't clutter. White or negative space refer to the empty space in between your content in the slide. If you notice, most of my slides have white large space rather than so many sentences bombarding in the same slide. Okay, so please use white space. Yes, I know, usually we try to make use every space in the slide that can bring distraction actually to our audience. If you throw too much on the screen, it's difficult for people to read. They would lose their attention. Okay, create a separation on your slide and focus on the message. Okay, don't bombard the audience with so many information in one slide. Okay, if you cannot fit in your text in one slide, then that's mean is too many text. Maksudnya terlalu banyak perkataan. So don't fit in too many text in one slide. Okay, alright. But in anyhow, white space can be any solid color or blurred color background. Okay, white space here not necessarily white color. Okay? It can go with any solid colors. So the concept is actually the background have to be clean. Okay, the background have to be clean. For examples like this slide, okay, as you can see, I put it a very simple images, large and big, and with a clean background. Okay, so what I want to put here, the message is less is more. Okay, for examples, let's take a look this slide. Okay, so the viewer eyes will be all over the place just to read the text on your slide. Okay, for example, the second one, maybe kita nak sedapkan hati, we put the bullets. But still, the viewer eyes will be all over the place to read and distract their attention to you. They won't pay attention to what you're saying because they're trying to read the statement. Okay. Saya suka untuk advise, try go and visit Apple website. Okay. It creates a feeling of elegance and luxury. Apple is a master when it comes to applying this concept. Less is more. It creates a feelings of elegance and luxury, and it focus on the products. Okay, so please don't create slide like this. Okay, it creates a visual overload to your audience. Kesian audience nanti. Okay, instead you can present a slide like this. Okay, just consists of a few points that you can elaborate in your presentation, rather than you just put it everything in your slide. I know. This one is actually the strategy. If you are forgetting something, then you can read from your slide, right? Okay, but this is not a very good presentation. Okay, so please make sure the points on your slide is the PowerPoint, and then you elaborate in your presentations in order to emphasize the idea to your audience. Okay. For example, the problem statement that is bombarded with information, I can change it into this. Okay, so you just put several images, a significant images that is related to your points, right? And then just put a points. Don't bombard the audience with a lot of information. Okay, itu satu bukan satu, itu yang kedua. Less is more. So you need to practice this because honestly, my slide helped me a lot during my proposal defense and also during my viva. Okay, because one of the examiner said that your slide helped you a lot because we actually pay attention to what are you saying rather than you are reading the slides. Okay, and and the chairman had a few more points that usually I am reading the slides without paying attention to the students. So it's sad truth. Tapi itu yang selalunya amalan yang dibuat kan. But if you're actually presenting this kind of slides, then the presenter just have a quick glance to the slide and they will start to view their eyes to you and pay attention to what are you trying to say. So it makes sense lah. Okay, and the second one is, the third one we go to the third one is what we said as the rule of thirds. Okay. In cinematography, there is a basic guideline how shot should be composed, and it is also applied to PowerPoint. Okay. Let me show you how. Kita namakan dia sebagai the rule of thirds. Okay, so here are some slides with some images and text. Wait, I want to find my pen. Okay. Okay, so here are the slides with some images and text. Let's see how we can improve it. Okay, daripada kita susun macam ni, how we can improve the arrangements and the presentations of this slide. The rule of thirds actually is simply divide the canvas into 3 vertical row and 3 columns. Okay, kejap I lukis. Sebenarnya dia boleh pakai guides tu kat atas, but my laptop cannot put the guides and cannot edit the guides in the slide. So I draw for you instead. Okay, so actually we simply divide the canvas into 3 vertical row and also columns. Alright, so now I'm dividing it. 1. Alamak, saya ingat. Tak apalah. Alamak. Apa dia tak berbekas? 2. Okay, so we divide into 3 columns, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then 3 vertical line. Macam ni. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3. Okay, as you can see, the lines intersect at these 4 points. Guess what it's called? PowerPoint. Okay, so these 4 points is what we call PowerPoints. What the odds? The key of the element of the slide should be around this PowerPoint. Okay, let's try to arrange this. Okay, for example, so I put the pictures here. Okay. About me, I put it here. And this one also I put around the PowerPoint. Macam gitu Okay, so let's take a look at the results. Okay, so what do you think? Before, after. Okay, so for me, the second one is more presentable. Right? So after this, if you want to align or arrange your components of the presentation, please use the rule of thirds. It is much more easier, and actually that one is the simplest way because all of us are not the designers, we are not the professional designers, but at least we do know how to implement a few principles in order to present and how short should be presented in the PowerPoint. Okay, so hopefully beneficial for you lah. Okay, last but not least. Okay, for presentation, please use SVG types of images. Okay, SVG is actually what we call as scalable vector graphics. SVG. Okay, when you use raster images like JPEG or PNG in your slides, you have to be very careful when resizing them. Okay, it looks fine in smaller size. For example, let me show you. Okay, I have my images here. It looks fine in smaller size. I can scale it down and it still looks fine. But when I scale it up, it will become pixelated. Nampak tak? Dia akan jadi pecah-pecah macam tu. It will become pixelated. So this is not a good image to be presented in your proposal defense. Okay, please make sure the images are clear to be presented. So I'm advising you to use SVG, scalable vector graphics. Okay, because like this one is SVG. Okay. If you use this type of images, you can scale it up without pixelation. For example, I scale it up. As you can see, it's not become pixelated. It still looks fine, even you scale it up or resizing it. Okay, and furthermore, if you use SVG images, you can edit the images at your own convenience. Okay, for example, you can change the color, shape fill, for example, to change the color, the whole thing will become the color that we choose. Or you can separate it, okay, ungroup it, just ungroup the images. Okay, and you can give a different color for each component. Oh, sorry, this one is not. Okay, for example, this one, you want to put it as red. So you can change the color based on the components and the parts of the images. Okay, so better you use SVG compared to JPEG or PNG to present your presentation for proposal defense. Okay, so itulah yang saya boleh bagi sikit-sikit kan, because within these 2 hours, of course, I cannot go through the whole tips and so on so all. But that one is the most crucial and most basic one for your presentation. Okay, and we come to our third factors to win the proposal defense. Okay, which is you, the presenter. Okay, and as I said, don't let your proposal defense be the first time you get feedback on your work. Okay, of course, before you go to proposal defense, you need to practice your proposal defense. Okay, if you have to give a presentation, sometimes some uni you don't have to give presentation, but you just have like a small discussion with a committee supervisory like that. Okay, but most of university in Malaysia you have to present the proposal defense, and some of the university you have to present it in the whole audience. Okay, with your friends, peers, and also the reader. Okay, so once you have to give a presentation, check any time restriction so you can prepare accordingly. Okay? You don't want to show up with 100 slides for only a 15-minute presentation. No, please avoid that. You don't want to show up with 10 slide but for 1 hour presentation. Alamak, nak cakap apa kan? 10 slide je. But the presentation will go through for about 1 hour. Okay, so the most important thing is to do for any presentation is to practice. Okay, so that you know the material inside and out. You know what is the slide, previous slide, what will be next. You know the content clearly. Okay, you know how long it takes for each slide. Okay, for example, of course, before come to this banquet today, I also practice with a slide because I really need to know how much the time, because Atira bagi saya 2 hours je. Let's say if I come with 100 and 150 slides, I won't be able to finish it in 2 hours. Okay, and of course, if you are actually practicing, okay, and then you found that you have burst the time located, then you can refine the presentation. Okay, you can cut this, cut that out, cut this presentation. Maybe it's not a must to know, you know, just good to know, so you just put it aside, right? Okay, so these are 3 things that you really know about your presentation. And of course, when I say you can practice on your own or with an audience. Okay, and actually my advice is you should do both if possible, because if you practice with your peers, then your peers will give you feedback. Okay, practicing on your own and speaking out loud also can. It may feel silly, but overcoming that discomfort is good preparation for the discomfort of facing an actual audience, kan? Maybe it sounds silly, we are actually talking to ourselves in front of the mirror, so on, so on. Tapi itu yang saya buat. As long as it's not fit in the time, I will repeat it again and again. Okay, so I will refine the presentation for proposal defense lah, but not for this bengkel. For proposal defense and also my Viva presentations, I do that strategy. Okay, practicing with an audience of peers is then a good way of getting feedback and finding out what questions may people ask about your presentation. So you could be prepared for any questions from your examiner or reader. Okay, so that's why we have 1 terms of mock Viva or mock proposal defense. Okay, so that we can prepare for any questions that come to us on that particular day. Okay, so practice, please. Okay, the second one is, of course, when we are dealing with presentations, of course, you'll be nervous before your proposal defense. Okay, you will almost certainly get an adrenaline rush, okay, which can set your heart racing, pop, 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 doop, da, and give you sweaty palms. Dah mula berpeluh-peluh kan? And sometimes most of us, we have a feeling that stomach churns and make you want to go to the toilet, maybe 10 times in 20 minutes, who knows, okay? So this is normal. This is normal, guys, okay? The worst part is the waiting before you start, because there isn't much you can do to use up all that nervous energy. But once the defense starts, you can do some things to keep it under control, okay? Before it starts, of course, we still nerves and dealing with the nerves, doop, dap, and whatsoever, okay? But after it starts, you actually can have ataupun boleh buat a few steps to cool it down. Okay, so the first advice is slow down. Okay, know your pace. One symptom of nervous is to talk really fast. Why you talk really fast? Because you to try to show how much you know. Okay, and speak in this kind of long stream of consciousness that diverge away from the question until you forget what the actual question was. So kita tends to macam cakap tak berhenti. So we don't know what is actually the question asked by examiner and what is actually we want to present on the slide. Okay, so that is a nervous symptoms. Okay, so the point is, try to slow down and give yourself to breathe. Macam saya buat sekarang. Okay, itu saya nak tunjuk contoh sebenarnya. This is the example. Try to slow down and give yourself time to breathe. Try to remember the questions and come back to the point. Pause a little bit. Means maksudnya tengah cakap tu, tarik nafas, try to slow down your pace, okay? And then try to pronounce it clearly, okay? Give the words out loud and try to get to the point back, okay? And then once you have answered, stop talking. Kalau kata examiner tanya questions and then you answered the questions already, stop talking. Tak payah sambung-sambung lagi. But then after that, ridiculously, okay, additionally, no. After you have answered completely the questions, then you just take a breath and stop talking. Okay, pandai-pandai lah examiner nak tanya soalan apa pula lepas tu. Jangan continuously talking. Alright, satu. And if at any point, if you forget the questions, it's okay to say, I'm sorry, Prof. I got lost in my train of thought, maybe, okay? What was the question again? It's not a sin. It's okay for you to answer the question, to ask the questions again. So jangan get confused kat situ and then tiba-tiba lost and then mulalah datang panic, panic attack and then kita mula nervous and then after that you will go through. Alright, so please take a breath and slow down. Okay, itu satu. Okay, kemudian the next point, which is bring me to the next point lah. Tadi because of the reading from the slide kan. Okay, I will advise you to elaborate the points in your own words. That's why you need to practice long way before you come to the proposal defense room. Okay, you need to practice properly. So just put a PowerPoint, the point that have a power in your slide and avoid to read from your slide. Okay, how you want to elaborate the points? If you actually know your research inside and outside, you are able to explain it in a very comprehensive way, okay, in many perspectives. So you don't have to worry about that, but still you need to practice. Without practice, then you cannot detect the flaw in your presentation. Okay, satu. Okay. And perhaps the last one, pause to think. For examples like you receiving a questions from the examiner and then maybe you are actually don't know what is actually the question is all about. You can repeat it, you can ask again the questions and maybe perhaps you can pause a little bit, take a breath. Okay, it's okay to ask them to repeat or clarify a questions again, maybe in a simpler sentences. Okay, it is okay to pause and think, stop sekejap. Maksudnya tengok sekejap kat luar tingkap tu just to calm yourself. And it is okay to take a sip of water if you need to. Sorry chairman, boleh tak I minum air sekejap? Kering lah tekak. Macam tu. Kita calm ourselves. Okay, sebab of course the what we call that, the examiner tahu kita ni nervous. Okay, dia akan tahu kita nervous sebenarnya. But then we have the power to control ourselves. Alright. The examiners expect you to be a bit nervous in your proposal defense. And luckily my examiner helped me through that processes. Okay. For example, like when I go into this one I'm talking about Viva lah, but more or less the situation is similar. Okay. When I go to the room, the chairman said, okay, take a breath, you can relax a little bit, you can go and look at outside of your windows, see what is interesting outside, So actually the examiner or the chairman will help us through that processes. But first, we need to control our first stress. Okay? Okay. Okay tak setakat ni? So means, I have covered the 3 factors, okay, that you need to pay attention for your proposal defense. Okay, ultimately, success or failure is determined mainly by the content of your proposal. Okay, if your research is good, if your proposal is good, and you actually did the work, it is highly unlikely that a nervous performance in your defense will lead to failure. It's okay to be nervous a little bit. It's not that when you are nervous, then you are failed. No, okay? The nervousness need to be controlled a little bit, that's all. Generally speaking, once your proposal is submitted, there is a much you can do, okay, to affect the outcome. But I'm happily to advise you, if you detect any error in your writing that you have submitted, please correct it in your slide then. Okay, that what I call as a second chance. Then, if the reader unnoticed the changes, then you can go along with it. But if the reader noticed the changes in your slide, which is different to your writing, then please be humble and confess that you are wrongly writing in your proposal. That's all. Okay. Yes. The next point will be humble. Okay. Please do not go against your examiner. Macam orang kata apa macam nak debate pun ada dalam parliament or whatsoever. No, it's not necessary. So if any advice from your examiner or reader, you just give your insights humbly, and then just admit that, okay, Professor, okay, Prof, okay, Doctor, I will go through back with my supervisor later on. Okay. Put your point confidently, but humbly. Betul ke humbly? Set your mind that you want to share your research with others, and you are happy to have a feedback from your examiner or from your reader, rather than just have a feedback in our circle only, which is our supervisors or co-supervisors, because more or less our supervisors and co-supervisors have clearly understand our research like us. Okay, but it is very good for us to get a feedback from outside of the circle too. Okay, so that we know that the person or the people that are not doing it with us or understand it with us really understand the research or not. Okay. Last but not least, before you go to proposal defense, read through your proposal. Read up 1 or 2 key points. Okay. If necessary, practice your presentation. And practice it over and over and over again until you satisfy with your presentation, until you can elaborate and explain the points, and you don't have to read the PowerPoints, okay, or read your slides, right? And please, after that you have done, okay, after 3 factors, that crucial foundations, that basis that you need to pay attention that I shared today, you have done that all. So please trust that whatever happens, you will be okay. All is well. All is well. Huh? Okay, so I think that's all the 3 factors that I want to share with you. Hopefully you have the best insight today and it is beneficial for you, okay? What can I say more? All the best, and please start it strong and finish it stronger, okay? So I guess I give back this Bengkel today, ataupun session today, back to Atira, our moderator.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tuti. So I'm the new Atira.
Dah tukar. Amalina pula.
Yeah. Alright. Thank you, Dr. Tuti, for your presentation. It's really clear. And from what I can conclude is that we all need to have enough preparation, like from the content itself and the presentation and the presenter itself. So we will proceed to the Q&A session. But remember, less is more. So we will just provide 5-10 minutes for a quick Q&A session, and we will like it much better if you could just unmute yourself to ask any questions. Right. Do we have questions here?
Semua dah keluar nak lunch tu, lapar dah agaknya semua tu.
Assalamualaikum, Doktor.
Waalaikumsalam.
Nice meeting you. Saya Nuraini.
Hai Nuraini.
Okay, saya ada satu je soalan. Doktor, bila Doktor present tadi, you never cited any source We been advised kalau kita present everything kita nak kena cited. Pasal when you become very infographic or information macam tu, it's hard to us to put everything. Sebab tu kita punya presentation sometimes jadi semak. Banyak nak cite kan. So will you advise us which one is better? Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Narani, for that questions. Which is a very good question. Where to put our citation? Okay, so advisably, you put all the citations underneath the slide. Let me show you examples, okay? This is my presentation for Viva. I put it this way because kita nak elakkan the bombard with the informations and the letters and the text, okay? Kejap I share sekejap Sekejap. Mana dia duduk? Okay, this one. Okay. Ini satu. Kejap bagi saya 1 minit. Okay, for example, I have this one examples. Macam mana nak share? Okay, jap. Window. Okay. Now, actually, especially literature review punya chapter, you don't have to cite everyone in your chapter, okay? But you can put the citations underneath your diagrams or infographic. For example, like you have a few authors here, then you just put the few authors name dekat situ. Okay, boleh, tak ada masalah. You don't have to put in every sentences tu you have to put the citation. Boleh, because you have to bend your mind. All the contents that we are presented is actually have been already cited in your writing thesis. Okay, so during your presentations, we want to minimize that kind of thing. Okay, so every sentences nak kena cite kan leceh juga, betul tu saya faham. Okay, so the start is, okay, the practical way to put the citation is you put the citation underneath your slide. Dekat bawah tu, dekat bahagian ujung tu letak semua nama authors. Kalau boleh yang readable lah, maksudnya masih lagi boleh dibaca. Because for me, during presentations of proposal defense or Viva, examiner will less focusing on which one is your citation. Where is your citation? Is it your citation is correct or not on presentation? Dia akan less worrying about that lah. Sebab that thing actually will be commented based on your writing of the proposal. Okay, so put it that way. Kalau macam literature review pula, I put it this way. Ini adalah literature review, so I just put the idea, the points, and then I put the author. Okay, so TSTS model is from MOE. Scientific and thinking skills is Fancham. Okay, so Noraini, please, when you are presented your content, you have to remember one thing. What we actually presented is the point. The elaboration is depend on us. Okay, so as you can see, I just present the points. Whereby in my presentations, I will elaborate each points in depth. So that you don't have to put lots of citations in your every text. Kalau kata kena tak citation means kita ada a very strong statement dekat dalam kita punya presentation. So please avoid that kind of thing. Just put the points and then just mention the author at the side of the points. Itu might be a good and practical way to do that lah. Boleh?
Thank you, Doctor. Nice.
Okay. Thank you, Noraini.
Doctor, there's a question in the chat box. I can read it for you. Okay, Doctor, how to decide the best framework between conceptual and theoretical framework? Because I'm doing a qualitative research and my topic can use both of them based on the reference journal that related to my topic. But I'm confused which one to choose better. Is there any advice to choose the best framework to apply?
Okay, all right. A very good question, Amalina. Okay, so how to choose your framework? More or less, saya nak advise, when you choose your framework, please be careful, because you need to compare it and align it with your research objective. That is the best framework that we can choose because it is fit in to answer our research questions. Or you can go back to your proposed or problem statement. Okay, you kena tengok balik problem statement, what is actually that you want to solve, and adakah theory tu tadi, okay, theory or conceptual framework or theoretical framework that we choose were able to present it or conclude or solve our problem that we have specified in the problem statement. Okay, so I think that one is the best strategy to know whether our conceptual framework is good to go or not. You have to go back to your problem statement. Okay, you kena tengok balik the elements of inside the theory were able to solve the problem or not. If not, if there's any elements or maybe are not actually interrelated with our problem statements, then you might want to choose another theory or conceptual framework. Okay, Amalina?
Okay, thank you, Dr.
So, saya baru perasan, saya gelap lah hari ni. macam tema misteri pun ada.
Alright, so any questions left? One, two. Okay, so alright, so I think everyone is can't wait for the lunch.
Yes.
Alright, so for the questions of webinar video and the slides, we will be shared through the WhatsApp group. So make sure you have registered first and get in our WhatsApp group. And maybe ask questions later. We don't have any slot left with Dr. Tuti. You might as well just ask now.
You can drop me a message if you want to ask any further questions. I think all of them have my contact number and email, right, Amalina?
Oh, I can give it to them. All right.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Okay. So welcome. Okay. I will give the WhatsApp group link later on. So this program is thank you, Dr. Titi. So this program is actually organized by chapter alumni UPM, and we have this ProExsa series, and this is the third series of our ProExsa sharing. Sorry, can. Alright. So we are actually providing lots of beneficial sharings for postgraduates and final year students. So hopefully we can keep in contact even after this program end, and you can just follow us in our Instagram and our FB page, which is there you have it, chapter Yours GPM. All right, and we will share our link video in the WhatsApp group later. So make sure everyone fill in this evaluation form so that we can improve our mistakes in handling the program all along. And I want to request one last time to have everyone open their webcam so that we can take a picture with Dr. Tuti.
Okay.
As our moment.
Alamak, saya ni kegelapan kat sini. Tak ada lighting ni.
Tu ada dah.
Nah, kan nampak dia kejap hilang nyampah betul kamera. Okey tak? Alah.
Wah, ada dalam kereta. Okay.
Sampai dalam kereta pun ada kan. Semangat betul.
Alright, so if everyone is ready, we will be taking screenshots in 3, 2, One. Okay. Do our technical get that picture? Miss Shuhada? Alright, okay, let's take another picture. Actually, chapter Data Alumni UPM has our own signature, which is you can make this V sign.
Wow. Ni nak buat ni tak nampak ni, gelap ni.
Alright,
Kira
okay.
je tak kira pula.
Okay, don't forget to smile. One, where's everyone webcam? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Alright, thank you everyone. Don't forget to fill in the evaluation form so that we can improve our ProExsa series, the upcoming one.